So we're back at it again. A second week. Okay, what's up, guys? So how's it been?
What an
This sounds
intro.
so artificial. What the hell? Sorry.
What
Okay.
an
Anyways, yeah, it's been kind of a lot of different news that's been popping up recently. But I think we can, take a step back and just think more about like different topics. So whoever has any cool topics that you want to start off with, we can just dive right in. Um, so does anybody want to speak first? I don't know.
Thomas, how about you start off? I have a few topics that I want to discuss, but I feel like they're segues from some general news this week.
Okay, I mean, I feel like the biggest news is the SBF got arrested. So carrying on from what we discussed last week was like, how come it took so long?
Yeah,
That's all I have to
he's not
say.
gonna get arrested.
Yeah.
And he did.
True. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Oh gosh. What do you guys think about that? It's like such a absolute clusterfuck.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's definitely good.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that it did happen because it seemed like they were gonna try to. He was gonna try to defend himself, go on all of those shows, go on mainstream media, and kind of say that he was innocent, which
Right.
was obviously a way for him to try to shift blame and to seem like the good guy in this whole story, or the victim at least. But it didn't really work out. Have you seen the morning show? The way that he was giving the interview, where he was like repeating the words of the interview, the person who was interviewing him.
No, I didn't.
No.
It was like some morning show that wasn't related to business at all. It was, I think, Good Morning America or something. It was, something
Okay.
very general. And then they went to wherever he was hiding. Was it the Panama or Dominican Republic? Which country?
Bahamas.
Bahamas, yeah, Bahamas. And then during the whole interview, he was just repeating the questions like twice or three times. Obviously, not to give away something and to not to give himself away. So it was very clear that he is the one to blame, and yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
What's really questionable, and this is I guess a different piece of the puzzle, is obviously we know about his parents, like Stanford professors, and also like knowledgeable in tax law. Right, like specifically, like, and then they're also in the payroll under FTX. They actually have like they're employees of FTX as well. So it just seems very questionable that like he doesn't know anything that he's doing. It just seems like the dude is from MIT and he has all this background of people that are like also knowledgeable, or at least older, or like, even though they don't have a board of directors, there's definitely people that are aware of like KYC and like all real rules on the finance, right? Like,
Sure.
Yeah, but also how to bend them in a sense too. It's like that's what I know from details that I've heard online.
Yeah. Do you guys think that his arrest is going to now spark a fury of other arrests in other cryptocurrency Web3 companies? Because I mean, there's obviously, we'll talk about a little bit about the lack of regulation in this space. And I'm just curious, like, in my own thoughts, in my own opinion, I really think that this is now going to be the start of a closer examination on all the other companies. See, okay, if SPF and FTX are doing all of this under the hood, maybe we should take a second look at all these other companies, maybe Binance, for example. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Binance at all, but I'm just using that as an example. So do you guys think that this is going to...
Or even Coinbase or any others,
Coinbase,
right?
whatever.
Yeah.
OpenSea. Do you guys think this is now going to serve as like a close examination for the US regulators to now look at these other companies?
George, do you want to go first, or should I?
Go ahead.
I think, okay, this is just conjecture here, but the funny thing is all the other guys, if you will, they, especially those two names, right? Binance and Coinbase, I feel like they are prepping themselves or adamantly trying to push for more regulation themselves, because they recognize that their field probably can't continue or like grow more, right? They want to be at the forefront, but at the same time, it's like CZ had like all this stock into FTX. He dropped it because it was toxic to maybe his future goals. And Brian Armstrong is very adamant on like creating more very strict criteria of what is the difference between a commodity and a security, right? So I don't know, like maybe they want to push for it. It could also just be marketing speak to make them look like more legitimate, to like mask these things. But I would say that based off their actions, given that like Coinbase is a like an actual company, a public company, it is in their best interest to obviously align and set the rules for regulation. But that's just my conjecture.
I don't think setting more regulation would really help the crypto space at all. To be honest, like this already happened. No matter how much regulation you put on, the what $8 billion have already vanished.
Right? Gone, yeah, that's right? True. Yeah.
So will this help people? Would this make them more confident in crypto? Not at all. It just would set higher barriers for KYC that nobody really wants to fill out all those forms. So it would just have a negative effect. And most importantly, I'm not so sure the regulation would be really able to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because it still might. And what they're pushing for mostly is KYC stuff. It's mostly side on the client, on the anti-money laundering. That if you heard the hearings that they had in Congress, it wasn't really about how do you manage the exchange itself once the money is already in. So they're just pushing their own agenda, the U.S. policymakers, which doesn't actually align with better safety and regulation.
Yeah, but that's how it's always been in the U.S.
I think there's also a problem because if you look at market segments, right? Like obviously, again, this is just conjecture. It's very hard because a lot of people, I would say obviously crypto bros are like a minority. It's not like everyone's a crypto bro. So when you're connotated with like pretty much putting your money inside a thing that's just very, I guess, seen as negative to most people, the majority, it's seen as like, well, you kind of deserve it. I don't think that's correct, but at the same time, it's just like maybe coming out of misconceptions about the best things that are coming out of crypto. But there also is a lot of vaporware, so it's like duly noted, right? Like some things shouldn't work the way they work, and then some things work the way they work, but people don't really know how they work, and so they just kind of shit on the whole thing, right? So I don't know. I find it kind of funny that in a sense, right, we look at these new pieces of tech, but I'm very worried to a certain degree. And I think I brought this up last week about how the new technologies that are coming out because of the funding from crypto might also get affected. I don't really know if that's a big deal nowadays because it seems like startups are acquiring other startups and there's just more like recession. But I don't know if we want to move to that direction in this conversation or bring up a different topic. What do you guys think?
I think there's a lot that's been said about crypto, and it's going to be a much slower process in terms of how it unravels than people expect. I don't think anything's going to come out in like 1 or 2 days. It's going to be a slow process of maybe a few crypto exchanges closing down and more regulation. So let's leave that for the next sessions. There's going to be a lot more news, I think, down the line. But let's jump into the GPT chat. I've seen it explode over last week. Like people that don't know shit about technology that I'd never thought would, know about this are suddenly using this for their essays. And people that do work in tech, like, are suddenly writing code using it. Like, for example, our developer was redesigning a website, and he told me that at some point he didn't have enough time, so he just kind of put variables or whatever into GPT chat. And it came out with code, and it even came out with features that he wasn't expecting to be in there, like extra features, which to me is mind-blowing. So what are your guys' thoughts? Where have you seen this already impact like industries, workplaces, projects?
I mean, I mean, I can just talk first because from like just like a tech angle, like from software engineers, I actually haven't seen this being used on my end at all. I remember it was like brought up early on, like as soon as it came out. We talked about it, we put in some examples. We did exactly what you just said, George, or what your developer did, which was, like ask if this was some general, how do I do this? How do I build this using these technologies? But honestly, after those first few days, I haven't really I haven't heard much about it. Everyone just said like, yeah, that's cool. Let's get back to work now. Let's do it the classic way of just writing code. And I will say that I think a large part of it is simply a little bit of fear and thinking that maybe this chat GPT, or whatever the fuck it is, was it GPT?
Chat
Right?
GPT.
Okay,
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, it's early, guys.
it's okay.
So I think that there is a little bit of a fear that maybe this is going to compete with our jobs now. I don't think it's very prevalent. I don't think it's something where it's like, holy shit, we have to like start making radical decisions now. But I think it's something that's definitely at the back of the mind of a lot of software engineers now, thinking like, holy shit, like, do you even need to hire as many engineers as you did prior? And I think that could possibly prevent it from being used a little bit more widespread in the tech community. But seriously, yeah, I don't think it's as big as a concern as maybe some people think. I think it's still in its infancy. You know, it just got all this publicity, and now we're at the stage of, okay, we have this technology. What are we now going to do with it? Because I know there's a lot of talk that's basically saying this is the new Google search. I don't know about that. I think we're still going to have to wait a little longer to see exactly how it matures. But it's still very early for me to say that it's made a massive impact. But I will say it definitely did bring the public eye on AI now and what it can do, which is always cool to see in the news cycle, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting because ChatGPT. So for context, it's funded by OpenAI, which is one of the top, AI companies.
Mhm.
But prior to this one, there was also like GPT-3, which is another transformer. If I forgot, is it general processing transformer? That's what that stands for. Basically, in simple terms, right? It's taking a lot of models of tech and information that you get from the web and then processing it in some sort of neural net to then pop out with an answer, right? So in this case, it might be taking like all of the Stack Overflow answers to compile and then come out with the code that would work to do that sort of task. But it's probably like, composed of all these different pieces of the puzzle that are found on the web. So I think in terms of the questions that are being arised right now, I don't know if it's really just the threat to coders. I've seen it kind of more be about the ethics in the AI space. So I don't know if you guys know that like what the data set they were training on. They train on this thing called Lion 5B. I don't know if you guys know. Okay, so OpenAI, they essentially take this giant data set called Lion 5B, which is a public data set of like all these things that have been web scraped throughout the internet. And they use that to construct the answers for ChatGPT. The biggest question is just how is Lion 5B collecting these pieces of data to, actually give the results to these transformers? Like everyone is questioning how is that the case? If you actually look at a lot of AI, there's a lot of problems with that as well, right? Because there's another very famous app that's popping up right now, I think just on general app store, where you take a picture of your face and then you
It's
kind
made by
of come out
Russians,
with
by the
art.
way.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And
Wait,
that's
Ukrainians or
another
Russians? Sorry.
no,
I'm
no,
not
no,
gonna
by
interrupt.
Russians, and that's a
Okay.
major concern with like Western policymakers and customers and everyone. Yeah,
Right.
made by a company based in Cyprus. So it's funded by a VC fund based in Cyprus, and the team left Russia right before the war, and I think they're based in Cyprus as well.
Okay, cool. So the issue is that they took a lot of art from other people, trying to understand the art style, right? And now it kind of gets copied over. So it's like the same question most people are asking, like, how are these models actually getting composed? And the problem is not a lot of transparency of how these things were collected is clear. If you look at like Lion 5B, this giant data set, there are obviously some things that you kind of have to question, like, is this truly something that is open to the public, or is it something they scraped and now they make it themselves public so that way that chat GPT can be able to access? Like it's like whitewashing the tech, the data. That's another piece of the puzzle. But in terms of tech, I guess my pitch in for that, for the technical side, going off of Errol, is that from what I have seen, It's not perfect. It does very like simple tasks very well. As we know right now, it's probably comparable to GitHub Copilot, which is another pretty much equivalent sort of style. Only that one you kind of type code and then it auto completes. Versus this one's like, tell me as a beginner or whatever to code me something, and I'll copy the snippet and then do a couple of adjustments. It still makes a lot of mistakes, or rather it makes mistakes relatively, right? And you have to know how to fix them. I think in the end of the day, I hope to look at it as a tool that will make production much faster and not something that replaces people. But I think there's still a split on like, where does this go? Where does this lead to? Yeah.
Another question that a colleague of mine, the developer in my team, raised was that how are they managing to keep this free, and whether they're going to have a subscription come out very soon. What do you guys think? The expenses seem quite high, right? Like there's so many people using this thing right now.
Yeah. Who are they funded by right now? Do they are they
OpenAI, you mean?
OpenAI,
which is Elon Musk's thing, right?
Yes.
It's Elon Musk.
Yes.
Okay. So I mean, yeah, if they have a lot of money and they I mean, I still personally don't see many people buying this. I think it's just kind of like a cool factor that people come in, they see what's up with it. I mean, if they have a lot of money already, I don't see them going the subscription route personally, or just any payment.
It's a bit weird. So again, OpenAI has a couple of different projects. The reason why I know this is because my friend Jijo is like full-on data scientist, right? Like he plays around with a lot of their tools because that's just what they do. So his research is more into like things for DALL-E 2. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's just another project for OpenAI, which is like the first existence or the first instance of like the thing that basically made Stable Diffusion. So basically taking art, you type in text or whatever, or you send a picture and you're like, give me another image of this thing based off this picture, right? They are the original people. They're the first ones who released a product for that. The way that it worked was that for DALL-E 1, it was free. But then when they made improvements, DALL-E 2 now costs money. So it takes like you have to pay a certain subscription to like request answers or pieces of art from DALL-E 2. I think it's a huge amount, but you still have to pay like a significant amount. So I think right now, maybe the version 1 is going to be free for ChatGPT, but I wouldn't be surprised if like next year there's going to be a ChatGPT 2 based off all the answers and fine tuning for this year. And that would be priced like high. Yeah. But I don't know, right? I think that even if you did that, it would still be a net loss, unfortunately, for now.
Probably.
Because even if they got subscribers to pay, realistically, right now, most people are using these things for research, right? They're not using it for production level products yet. At least for DALL-E 2, that was the case. Maybe it opens the doors for ChatGPT because you can use it for like maybe real applications like coding snippets, right? Or possibly some copywriting stuff. So maybe this is a competitor to like something like Jasper AI, but I don't know if they will be able to diversify out. It seems to me they want to create a general tool, not a fine-tuned tool, right?
Or maybe not yet. Maybe once they're 100% confident on it, then yeah. What are your thoughts on the interest rate hikes and the stock route, the NASDAQ and tech company stock route?
I personally I haven't looked too much into the details. I just saw the headlines. I saw the stocks go up. I saw them go down the next day. All I know is my portfolio is not too hot in the past, I would say quarter.
Yeah.
But
Dow
yeah,
Jones has gone so much lower this week. Okay, anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it's bad, but yeah, actually, George, can you give us like a synopsis if you know like what's going on, like what's been up this past week, really?
Sure. So at the end of last week, everyone thought that the inflation numbers are below expectations, which is great because it means that the interest rates aren't going to go up as much, or at least they thought the Fed wouldn't raise interest rates. that much because the inflation is quite low. But then the surprise move was that the Fed actually raised it, and quite aggressively, and their guidance is they're going to keep on raising the interest rates, which
past 2023
past
essentially.
2023.
So it really like killed people's confidence. They're like, it's okay to raise inflation. I think most investors expected that. But now when they're saying, oh, it's just we're going to keep raising it and by this amount, people are like, what does that mean? Like, is this just going to create a recession based? Like, I think the idea here is that we're going to create a recession on purpose with our inflation numbers. So that way we don't have to have it in free fall, right? Like it's basically reel it in super conservative with our interest rates so high so that we are prepping for the future to not go so bad. It's just, yeah.
And I think it's the right strategy. It actually makes a lot of sense from an economics perspective.
Right.
But of course, that is the worst case scenario for tech companies. Because pretty much, if we say that in the last 2 years, the growth came in at X amount, let's call it like 100%. Out of that 100, the real growth that came from people just adopting new technology because the way of life changed. And then after the life is kind of normalizing, the people are still on that digital kind of product consumption, and their behavior changed in general.
Post-COVID.
Yeah, post-COVID. The effect of that is maybe 20%. And 80%, in my opinion, came from just the subsidies that the government was providing all the way up to last year. So if you take all of that out, then at most the tech companies should be worse what they were worse at the end of 2019. That would be the reasonable calculation. So until all of that air, the hot air, is out, I think we're just going to see it go down even more significantly. But the fundamentals are there in the long run. It's just they're 80% overpriced.
Right. I think the major thing is just like, again, everyone expects that there will be higher inflation, more interest rates, but it's like how are you spreading this across for all at the end of 2022 all the way to the like end of 2023? If you're doing it all like in the beginning, it's really bad to want to do anything with stocks or anything with your portfolio right now. You just want to lay low or like just not freak out, right? But if it's spread across where we're thinking about, okay, we're going to raise basis points here a little bit, and then we're going to, take it in steps, then investors could be happy. They can be like, okay, well, I could still approach this and do a strategy, but it's just very like nobody knows what's up right now. I do have a question for you guys, given that you have more of a background on, I guess, startups. What do you think this is going to do for the startup ecosystem? Like, are startups going to start acquiring a lot more startups? I think we're already starting to see that, but like, what do you guys think is going to happen?
Acquiring at valuations that founders are interested in, excited about, or working for this amount of time for. I don't think so. It's going to be acquisitions at very low valuations that are much more close to the real world as to what the company is worth. And those won't be the acquisitions where the founders come out with something that is very, very positive for them. They come out with a decent exit, with maybe some money to start another more sustainable business, but it's no longer this life-changing exits.
And wait, are you talking about like very early on startups like seed, Series A, or are you mentioning like these larger ones who might be north of $1 billion?
Well, I feel like there's a separate question. Like I actually have a follow-on on that, but I would say probably like mid eating small, like basically bigger eating smaller, and possibly huge eating big, right? Like stupid huge eating big.
Got it. Okay. I'm like, because I'm still thinking, I told you guys this a long time ago, but like, I still believe, and I just have to say this on camera as we're recording. I still think that Google's going to acquire GitLab, and I'm so confident of it. And that's what I'm thinking about this next 1 year, about these massive companies. If companies like Google and Amazon still have some cash, I haven't looked at the balance sheets yet, but if they have some cash and they are open to actually acquire these pretty big companies, because I know GitLab's already IPO'd. They're publicly traded, right? I think that's going to be a big trend that we're going to see in the next year or 2 years, is these massive companies acquiring these much smaller companies, but they're highly valued. You know, they're not just creating a new product. They already have some traction, because I think these big companies will need to focus in on a lot of the quality aspects. You know, I don't think they can take a risk now and buy up a company or acquire a company that only has like, you know, $500,000 in sales. But once again, that's just from my perspective. I know, George, you got like the whole finance startup VC funding route. So, but just for me, I think it's going to be a lot more on the quality aspects, and they would have to be north of, I would even say, like 500 million, $1 billion.
I think if it's a bigger company, somewhat closer to a unicorn or over that, there is potential for acquisition. The key part of it is the unit economics, because GitLab, for example, is still not profitable. I think as of at least midpoint this year, but I don't
I've
think
looked at the
they're
balance
profitable.
sheet. So the weird thing is that from an investor point of view, it is definitely a buy. Like a lot of analysts, they're saying it's a good buy, but it is losing money. The only thing is just it's a calculation of how much are they losing to how much is the revenue increasing, right? Because if you're looking percentage, right, it is lessening. Like it's actually way more improved than it was like when they IPO'd. But the stock price is also stupidly low because of the interest rates and everything else. So that's why it's definitely like quote unquote undervalue. That's why people are thinking it is a good buy. I don't know, like they can hold that, like big companies can definitely hold these companies ransom for essentially buying it on the cheap, right? Like if they have the money, they can be able to buy these companies at even at valuation from previous, right? That would be like the best deal that they can have, especially if these companies might die, like because they don't have the wherewithal to raise more rounds or they can't do it.
But I will also say,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
okay. I was going to say, like, very quickly, in a company like GitLab's case, I'm thinking about, like, you know, Google or a much bigger company acquiring them, because although they may not be profitable, I really feel like these massive companies will have to double down on areas that they are making a lot of money. Like, for example, AWS, or not, excuse me, Amazon. I think they just completely slashed their was it the Alexa Amazon products that they sell themselves, just because they weren't making any money from that. And so if we now look in the next year, I think a company like Google is going to say, okay, we're going to have to double down on our product of Google Cloud platform. And what's a great fit is from somebody who's used Google Cloud, GCP in the past. I think that GitLab is just such a perfect fit for them, because sure, they may not be profitable, but I think in that case, with, you know, there's so much risk, the entire economy is not going to be doing so well in the next year. Google's going to have to say, what can we improve? What's the best area? And it's going to be a route by acquiring a company like GitLab. So it's doubling down on the areas that they're already doing well that they really need to improve on. Also, yeah, sorry for, you know, cutting you off, George, by the way, but yeah, you go.
I think it's like, if it's an existential threat, that's one of the reasons why there are going to be acquisitions in the next couple of years in this downturn. And the second only reason is if it is profitable. For example, let's take the Figma Adobe. There's a perfect example. It's an existential threat for Adobe, for sure. But at the same time, Figma has been profitable over the last 3 years. They've been showing very small profitability, but they're profitable. It's not like Adobe is going to have to, you know, burn extra money on Figma just to keep it afloat. So if it is, I think that's what the calculation is going to come down to. And you're right. Like, if that's what Google chooses to focus on, and they realize cloud is their most profitable division, which I'm pretty sure it is, then it would make sense to make acquisitions in that area. Yeah. And there may be some more divestments, by the way. Like, on this side, there's acquisitions that are very strategic. There's also going to be more divestments. For now, with the Alexa and other voice assistant stuff, they've only kind of cut down on the teams. They haven't really made any divestments, but there are going to be divestments. I think the electric vehicles, Amazon owns what, Rivian, I think, a big share in Rivian.
Yeah.
I think that could be something they divest from in the next year or two.
Do they still own it?
Well, I don't think they own it. It's like
well, by that, I always thought
like
they
big
had
investor. I don't know. I don't know the details.
They own a stake. They own 20%.
Yeah, but like significant minority stake essentially, and funneling the actual funding for that. Okay, well, I kind of like, I think those are really good projections. One thing that I'm just wondering though is on the other flip side. Usually when these types of things happen, it also means the death of certain businesses because they have to kill products so rapidly that they inevitably either make a mistake or it's the end of their business life cycle, right? Do you think there will be businesses that essentially die? For example, I don't know, Netflix going to be a much smaller company. Facebook might be a significantly smaller company. Like, what do you guys think?
That's hard to picture. I've heard this narrative recently, but that's just hard to picture. They're actually too big to fail, essentially.
Interesting.
Or too big to scale down. The same way that the banks, because it's hard to picture like a large Wall Street bank becoming smaller, right? That just wouldn't really happen. They're either shut down or they remain of the same size. The divestment process is a very long period. Usually nobody takes that route in the real world. So I feel like it's going to be too big to fail. Who's going to be upkeeping Instagram and Facebook if the company goes under, right? And our whole world depends on it at this point. I guess Elon is proving otherwise, but to me it seems like you still need a lot of moderation, especially on Facebook.
I think the weird thing is just like how other competitors are entering, or not entering the space, but other competitors are eating their lunch, right? For attention economy. Like TikTok is so big that like the government is like, should we just ban this company, right? Like there's all of that. I think that those guys are weirdly enough eating YouTube's lunch, eating Facebook's lunch, eating like everybody's lunch, Netflix's lunch. Netflix doesn't have a great pricing model because of subscriptions. Like why pay subscriptions to Netflix when I can watch free TikTok? I know it's not the same, but
it is.
They're
They're
both
competing for the same
media.
attention span of the customers. So I think they're direct competitors from my perspective.
It's a really weird question. I don't know. I'm very precarious. They're also eating Twitch's lunch as well for like advertising, right? Advertisers want to place their ads all over the place, but they want to place them where they're most effective. And obviously TikTok being young demographic, even younger than us sometimes, right? Highly influential, stupidly high click-through rates because you have way more ads to show in a given 60-minute time frame because you can show way more TikToks, right? Everything is moving towards like crazy amounts of content where TikTok's taking over. They're even doing long shorts now, right? Like competing almost directly with YouTube.
Whatever that means.
Yeah. I don't know, like there's so many things going on. Another thing that's been on the forefront, totally separate, is like Microsoft and Activision. I don't know if you guys know, like they want to do a merger. I don't know if that's something we have to save for the next time we discuss, but like it's like on one hand, companies might be dying. On the other hand, they're still like the big companies are still being regulated on how big they can grow. Like what is too big and what is antitrust, right?
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Yeah, that we can talk about a lot more for I think next episode. But yeah, that is it's just so funny to, it's not funny, but I kind of like how even these really big, these Goliath, what is a fucking Goliath? Oh my god, I'm like, sorry. Even that these massive companies, they're still being regulated to some degree. We can't just have like a pure monopoly. And I think it's also I think it's Sony who's one of the strongest opponents to this acquisition, just because
Sony,
because the other end, they're saying, hey, Activision Blizzard, and all of the other companies, King, all of them are going to be making products specifically for Microsoft or Xbox. And there's all of these new, like, we can definitely go into it a lot more, but it's really interesting to see these big companies just go, head to head. It's not just like one company now going head to head with the government. It's now these other companies coming in and being like, no, you guys got to stop them. And is this an amazing?
What do you think, Errol, by the way, about too big to fail? Like Facebook being too big to fail, by the way.
Oh yeah, as a whole, I would say, yeah, they're not gonna fail anytime soon. I mean, not in the foreseeable future. By all means, people are like giving them a lot of shit, specifically Facebook, because they switched to become Meta. They're going into the VR space and they're getting a lot of crap for it. And I can understand why. But at the same time, I really do think, as you and Thomas were just saying, too big to fail. I don't think it matters if they're going full on into VR. I don't think it's going to affect at the end of the day, people using Facebook, people using Instagram, people using WhatsApp, right?
Yeah, I have a hot take. I don't know if I want to be an optimist, but I rather also be devil's advocate. In the 2000s, we thought that Yahoo was too big to fail. Who the hell uses Yahoo now, right? Like yeah. It's literally the same thing. We can look at it as for search engines. Yahoo was AOL, right? Like all these things. In comes Google with seemingly a better search engine, just one small difference. And then better acquisitions because it was recessionary at that time. Buying YouTube, buying Google Maps, Google Earth, images, all of these things. I don't know, like it's one thing to say, oh guys, these are too big to fail, but at the same time, Facebook's direct competitor it's TikTok. Is that the new Google to Yahoo comparison here? Like, sure, they're moving to Meta, but like they're losing their money too there, right? Like it's the wrong turn. It's like putting all your money into Yahoo Finance and nothing else.
But it took a long time. So I think we'll see. We'll see. Anything could happen in the span of 2 decades. Within the next 5 years, I wouldn't expect any major movement in social media.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's a good ending point. We don't know yet, but that's why we discuss these things, right? Like hopefully we can see something interesting for us. So excited.
Yeah, it is interesting though how we started this conversation talking about SBF getting arrested, right? A massive company too big to fail, some would think, and now we kind of ended being like, yeah, we still don't know about all these other companies. So yeah, so we're looking at from the end stage to the now, what the hell is going to happen stage. Just really interesting.
But, okay. I think that's it for this episode. We can definitely pick up where we last left off with maybe even Activision and the whole merger. I know a lot of details about that because I'm really into gaming, but we can save that for next time. And we can discuss some other things, and then we'll figure out how to publish this stuff to the right places. But we should be on Spotify, iTunes, and I think YouTube, right? So we'll get that done this week. All right. Great. So yeah, nice meeting you guys. We'll talk next week, next episode. Yeah, all right. Yeah. See you.